from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. It's Monday night. Welcome to the program. Give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, and you can chime in every hour this evening. We'll be taking calls throughout the evening. And I want to obviously take a look at some of the big stories here. One of the biggest stories of the day is that Biden's poll numbers are abysmal. Although some are arguing that at this same time in President Trump's tenure, that they were exactly the same or worse. So we're going to get into that with one of America's best pollsters in a little bit. But first, I want to get to the other big story of the day, which is the announcement of yet another presidential contender, U.S. Senator Tim Scott. And I think I mentioned this the other day, but we have some audio of it, and I wanted to let you hear it. Because this is an interesting angle, right? Tim Scott, he's kind of hinted towards this. I think, I feel like Tim Scott is not the ideal Republican candidate, but maybe I'm wrong, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And I'll also run this by our guests in a little bit. But I find it interesting. And, you know, some are saying that he's really just running for vice president to Trump or anybody else that's announced. But I don't know. I'm curious to see your thoughts. I mean, I think I could get with that idea. I don't think he has the numbers and the gravitas to do that, but I could be wrong, right? I mean, anybody can turn something around with given enough time, and we are, you know, not even at Memorial Day. So we could see how that goes. There's also rumors that tomorrow will be the announcement of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. If so, I will have egg on my face because I've said I don't think he does it. So let's see what happens tomorrow. And I will issue America my official crow-eating statement of eating crow, where I say, I guess y'all were right and I was wrong. I just don't see this working out for DeSantis. But again, I could be wrong. And maybe this is his ticket. We shall see. I think this is going to put him in a tough spot with Floridians who are, many of them I feel are going to say, look, I just voted for you and you're abandoning ship. I think some people are going to feel that way. And again, I like DeSantis a lot. I think he's terrific. I'm not one of these people that's out here saying he's a George Soros puppet and this, that, and the, I'm not saying any of those things. I think he's he was a good legislator. I think he's a good governor. I think there's some back and forth that has to be had with Disney and to get, it's okay to fight the culture war, but I think this is it's getting to a point where it's like, how far is too far, right? When you're the governor. And I think we're about to find that out. But Tim Scott has made his announcement, and I want you to hear it. Check this out.
Joe Biden and the radical left are attacking every single rung of the ladder that helped me climb. And that's why I'm announcing today that I'm running for president of the United States of America.
All right. There's Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, with his announcement of his presidential campaign. And I'm happy for him. Again, I don't know Tim Scott. I don't have any issue with him per se. I just have, in my circles, I've never come across him, like whether it was like CPAC or anything like that. I've just never met him in any of the conservative circles I've traveled in. But I'm sure he's a wonderful, nice guy. And I suspect that he's going to get some gravitas here to break from the pack. And we'll see. And I think what is really interesting is the diversity, right, of candidates. You've got an Indian woman in Nikki Haley. You've got an Indian man in Vivek Ramaswamy. You've got an African-American man in Tim Scott. You've got Trump, a.k.a. Orange Man Bad to many on the left. Did I leave anybody out? I don't think I did. If I did, forgive me. And as of tomorrow, perhaps we might have Governor Ron DeSantis, guy who's my age. He's going to bring youth. This is the big argument you're hearing from a lot of people. And I got to tell you, this is an argument I'm hearing from a lot of my friends that are on the other side of the aisle, or whether they're independent or whatnot. I make it a point to make sure I have friends everywhere, right? I'm not one of these people that, I'm just sick of these people. I get it. No, I'm not sick of them, actually. I really enjoy hearing their differences of opinion and all that stuff. Because again, I've never really based my friendship with someone on their politics. That's never, if that would have been the case, I would have had no friends, right? Remember, I was a conservative Republican in New Jersey. There isn't a lot of that activity going on here, right? This is home to the creation of rhinos. So this is an interesting thing. But that's where we are. So Tim Scott is running for president, and it's a very diverse field. On the other side, you've got a Kennedy and a Biden. Not much diversity there, although I know that's the team of diversity, right? And I just find it, I point it out because it's interesting. It's interesting, and this happened the same thing last time, right? They were saying, because it's old white men, Republicans are bad, old white men. And then it came down to Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden. And Joe Biden won the nomination, or, cut the deal to become the nominee. And I just thought, fascinating how the people that live their lives through the lens of racism ultimately succumb to going with an old white guy who's now going to be the oldest. And I have no issue with that. I really don't. My issue with Biden's not his age. And I realize that he uses muscle memory and he's been a crooked politician for a long time. But that's not the issue. For me, the issue with Biden is his corruptness, right? The fact that he is a crooked politician, the fact that he doesn't have America's best interest at heart, and the fact that he's not very sold out for the cause of America. He's more sold out for the cause of his pocket. And to me, that's the worst part. And that's my estimation, my opinion, in my view. But Joe Biden, he's not willing to take a stand for America. He's not willing to really do what needs to be done for this nation to flourish. He's doing what needs to be done for his situation to flourish, to not rock the boat, to go along to get along, and to create fissures wherever he can that would help him with wedge issues. And that's what he's doing, and that's what he's done in the past, and it's what I suspect he'll continue to do. And one of the wedge issues that I think that they're using the NAACP for, the National Association for what does that stand for? The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The mission there is a social cause, but yet now they're saying you can't go to Florida. There's a travel ban on Florida by the NAACP because they say that DeSantis is he's now DeSantis Man Bad, and it's laughable, in my opinion, how the left tries to create these racial caricatures of just about any Republican they can find. And I'm curious to see what they're going to say about Tim Scott, whether it's going to be he's the brown face of white supremacy or something along those lines, because that they never let up. But anyway, we're going to get into Biden's poll numbers straight ahead. I want you to join the conversation. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833 the number 4, my last name, Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And I want to jump into this topic of Joe Biden's poll numbers because these just came out. And even the media is stunned by this stuff, right? I think they're just they're shocked because he's not doing any better. And of course, that makes sense to me. But I'm a very biased individual, right? I don't like Biden's policies. I don't like the way he's handling the border. I don't like what he's doing with the economy. I don't like the way he's handling the negotiations with McCarthy over the debt limit. I mean, I don't like anything. So, it doesn't surprise me that he's getting bad marks from Americans. But these numbers are out, and some are surprised, saying they're doing worse than he thought he was doing. I want to get with one of the pros because our next guest is a pollster. He's a CEO and partner at McLaughlin Associates, and he's been doing this for a long time. John McLaughlin, welcome.
Hello. Great to be with you, Rich.
Yes, sir. And let's talk about this. Let's jump into this a little bit because there's a new poll, right? Let's see what I'm talking about here. It says 31% of Americans polled are supportive of Biden's policies on immigration and guns. That means 69% are not.
No. And full disclosure, you know that in 2016, 2020, I worked for President Trump, and I'm working for President Trump again. But I tell you, it's great that Joe Biden's running again because we could beat him for a third time. But the reality is, I mean, when you look at the polls, you don't have to just look at my polls. Like we published a poll back in the end of April 28th, and Joe Biden, his job disapproval is 55% disapprove, only 42 approve, and that's among 1,000 likely voters across the country. And 70% think the country's on the wrong track, and they think the economy is getting worse. 68%, only 26% better, and 55% think the country's already in recession, and 84% think inflation has impacted them negatively, and 44% say it's to the point that they can't afford to make ends meet. So it's no surprise, like in our polls, we've had President Trump leading Joe Biden since Biden surrendered Afghanistan. And granted, President Trump has gone up in the polling for the primary, and it's been in direct correlation with the attacks that Biden and Bragg and the other Biden, people have generated against President Trump. Because in January, we were only leading the Republican field 43 to DeSantis 31. Pence was at 5. And now it's 52% Trump, 16 for DeSantis. So his Trump's gone up. DeSantis' support's been cut in half, 6% for Pence, 4% for Haley and Ramaswamy. And in that same poll, Tim Scott, who announced today, had 2%. So President Trump has certainly benefited from Biden's failure, but the country's suffering, and that's why he's running again. He's running to put the country back on the right track, because when he was president, inflation was low, the economy was growing. Certainly he had to deal with COVID, but when he left office, the economy was growing again. Millions of jobs were being created again, and America was strong. I mean, the other countries were afraid of us. They did, they may not have liked us, but they certainly Russia and China respected us then. And now it's the country's gone backwards. I mean, he's really the worst president that I've seen in my lifetime, Joe Biden. And when you talk about his job ratings, I mean that poll that you're talking about that was out today, where by the way, when Washington Post and ABC find Donald Trump's leading Joe Biden, and Harvard Harris, which is done by Mark Penn, who was Hillary Clinton's pollster, has Trump leading Biden 47-40, and they've got all these negative job ratings and low approval ratings for Joe Biden, and when you're looking at all the major issues, whether it's inflation, the economy, the border, immigration, crime, and certainly the idea of national security or ending the war in Ukraine, Joe Biden's job ratings are through the floor. So, right now, I think a lot of Democrats are worried that he may be leading their ticket next year, and Donald Trump certainly looks better and better every day.
John McLaughlin, I want to, and we don't have to get to the bottom of it now, but I wanted to bring it up before we take a quick pause. The ABC Washington Post poll has a 32% of the voters that they spoke with saying that they feel that the president being 80 years old doesn't have the mental capacity to serve effectively, or 32% voters say that he does have it. So obviously 68% feel that he doesn't. And this seems to be a big issue when the numbers are that skewed, or am I looking at it the wrong way, thinking the numbers are too skewed? Is that how it usually looks?
Well, I think it's certainly a big issue. And the other part is, I mean, when Hillary Clinton says age is a fair issue, I mean, it's almost like Lady Macbeth coming onto the stage. But she says it's a fair issue, and it is a fair issue because, back in the 2020 race, if you were a Trump voter and we asked you what do you like least about Joe Biden, you said his corruption. You would say, and it was rooted in Hunter Biden's laptop. But a lot of Biden voters weren't aware of that. In fact, we know in our post-election poll, 36% of Biden voters weren't aware of it, and if they were aware of it, they would have voted for Trump. However, if you were a Biden voter back then, and we asked you, of the 51% that ultimately voted for him, and we asked them, what do you like least about Joe Biden? They said his age. But it wasn't a disqualifier then. But now it's a disqualifier because the economy is hurting. There's no growth in the economy. Inflation is rampant. Immigration, the border's out of control. Crime is out of control in a lot of cities. And America's weak in the global stage. Energy prices, we're not producing energy anymore. We were energy independent when Donald Trump was president. And everything, when you go back to inflation, people are going to be they're going out to the supermarkets this week to buy, for their Memorial Day picnics, et cetera, and family get-togethers. There's people saying, I can't afford to buy steak this year. We're going to have to go with chicken, or the price of eggs are too high. I mean, you're dealing with things that Americans weren't used to even during COVID. They had these things, and they had them at reasonable prices. And now, since Joe Biden's been president, the average American's buying power has gone down at least 15% because of inflation. So you're getting paid the same, but you can afford less, and you're paying more for utilities. You're paying more for to buy a home, to buy a car. I mean, some of the luxury items people wanted to buy are out of the question, and now he's talking about
luxury items like food, right? Luxury items like food.
Right. Exactly.
John, stand by right there. I just want to remind everybody who we're talking with. We're on with John McLaughlin. Check out his website, McLaughlin Online. And he's a former pollster for President Trump, current pollster for President Trump's campaign, as well as probably one of the top pollsters in the country, in my opinion, with a high degree of accuracy. And we're going to talk about a few other things coming straight up. I want to see how I wanted to get your opinion on the matchup between Trump and DeSantis. I've been a skeptic of even thinking DeSantis is really going to run. I felt like he's testing the water, but didn't really want to get into a fight because I think it wouldn't help him. But I'm hearing through the grapevine that tomorrow's the big day, and if that is going to be the case, I want you to help us set the stage on that one. And of course, you can call the show if you have a question, comment. Feel free, 833-4-VALDES, 833, the number 4, my last name, VALDES, or you could leave a comment online on any of the social media, at Rich Valdez. Of course, that's Valdez with an S. And we're coming straight back with John McLaughlin, your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with John McLaughlin, pollster to President Trump, CEO of McLaughlin Online. And John McLaughlin, I'd love to get your take on this announcement that I'm hearing, or rumors that I'm hearing, that there'll be an announcement from Governor DeSantis tomorrow launching a presidential campaign. A, do you think that's happening? B, if so, how do you think he fares?
Well, I'll be the last one he tells, but it's like I'm reading,
right.
I'm reading the same news reports you are, and they've run a shadow campaign for months now, and
For sure.
And what's interesting to me is, again, like I mentioned earlier, that back in January in a multi-candidate field, Trump was ahead with 42% of the vote to DeSantis's 43% to 31%, and everybody else was in single digits. And now, in our last national poll, it was 52 to 16 among Republican primary voters. And we have Trump ahead in Iowa, 54 to 20 over DeSantis among likely caucus goers. You can go to the website, Real Clear Politics and other ones, and Trump's ahead of Biden. He's ahead of Biden in the average, and we never had that in the general election because we were always in 2016. It was an electoral battleground state play, and the same thing in 2020 where. In 2016, we won by 78,000 votes, cast in 3 states. And in 2020, we lost basically the electoral votes, the Electoral College, in 3 states by 44,000 votes, all total, out of 160 million cast. So now you have Trump ahead in the national popular vote. We've never seen that. And we had it, Trump leading 47-43. I mean, Harvard-Harris has him up 47-40. The average Real Clear Politics has him up like a point and a half. Trump would win in a landslide right now over Biden. Biden is truly one of the worst presidents. And so DeSantis' reason for getting in was that, unlike Trump, I can win. Well, that's not true. I mean, I don't know why he's running right now. And
say different.
Yeah, and basically what you can see is the D.C. establishment inside the Republican Party is lining up behind DeSantis, and they're still urging him to run. And Trump has the grassroots support because when Biden and Bragg indicted the president and they keep throwing all these prosecutions at him, the Republican vote just gets more solid, and the national vote gets more solid, and Joe Biden's job ratings continue to fail. And one-on-one against Ron DeSantis, again, back in January, one-on-one against Ron DeSantis, we had Trump leading him 52 to 40 among national Republicans. Trump now leads, 67 to 26 over DeSantis, one-on-one. So all these other candidates coming in and splitting up, the anti-Trump vote or I prefer somebody else. Trump is getting stronger, and you have some time to go, but it's a narrow path for DeSantis, and DeSantis has been out there running. He did a book tour. He's been visiting states, and his votes go down, and his reason for running is becoming weaker. So right now it's like Trump's running against today. Trump hit Biden on the border on immigration. It's like 10,000 people are coming in every day that don't belong here. It's illegal. And, Donald Trump's somebody who could stop it. He had control of the border when he was president. So, we know that Donald Trump can be president. He'll be a good president for 4 years. He'll fix the mess that Biden's left. Ron DeSantis should wait, and he could be president for 8 years after 4 years of Trump, and it would make a lot of sense. But, there's Republican establishment, these country club Republicans, they don't want the caddies taking over the party. And it's so they're getting behind Ron DeSantis to stop Trump again. But the reality is when Trump's the nominee, over 90% of the Republicans are going to vote for Trump. Trump's leading with independents right now nationally. Nationally, he's leading with independent voters. And, right now the party's coming together, the rank and file, the grassroots of the party's getting together behind Donald Trump. And I can tell you from my experience with Donald Trump in the campaign this time and previously, he is totally focused on winning. He's doing what he has to do. And you can see it from the time he went to East Palestine when Biden wouldn't go after the toxic train accident. And Biden wouldn't go there. He was too busy giving away money to foreign countries. And Donald Trump went there, and he took care of the working men and women of America, and that's the type of presidency he had, and that's where his support's coming from in the primary and in the general election. So we'll see what these other candidates want to do, but right now Donald Trump is looking very strong.
And he bought him all McDonald's when he went there, which I thought was a nice touch. Yeah. Great PR, great optics.
Well, now, that's who he really is. By the way, if you know him, he's not a Washington insider. He's a business guy, and he was a real estate developer, and he was a construction guy. He would put on a hard hat and go to the website, go to the work sites, and he's comfortable doing that. Whether it's a police station or workers helping out people in an emergency, that's what he does. He's best at his moments with regular working people. That's when you get to see the real Donald Trump, and that's how I knew him in New York. I'm from New York, and I knew him before he ever got in the race, and when he was thinking about it, knew him before he was thinking about it, and then he got in, and that's why the people that work with him, he's their blue collar billionaire. He's genuine, and those are the moments when he's genuine, and he should do it more often. So,
John McLaughlin, I once had a fascinating interview with Pastor Darrell Scott, and he tells me, he says, Trump invites us on Trump Force One. He says, we get on, and there's these, golden seatbelt buckles, and it's fancy. He says, you guys hungry? Yeah. And he says, bring us some food. And they bring in these very fancy dishes that are like covered and like, I don't know if they're brass or chrome or whatever. And he says, and when they opened them up, they were a bunch of Big Macs. Yeah. He said they were expecting like filet mignon, and they got Big Macs. He said it was still good. He said it was just very interesting, and it was quite a surprise. All right, John McLaughlin, stick with us. I just want to get a couple more numbers out of you, and I appreciate your time and staying up late with us. Folks, we're on with John McLaughlin. He's CEO of the McLaughlin Group. Check him out at McLaughlinOnline.com. He's President Trump's pollster and has been so in the past, and one of the best and most accurate pollsters that I've seen in politics to date. John McLaughlin is with us for another segment. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Joe Biden and the radical left are attacking every single rung of the ladder that helped me climb. And that's why I'm announcing today that I'm running for president of the United States of America.
All right, John McLaughlin is our guest. And John McLaughlin, that was Senator Tim Scott at his announcement, announcing, obviously, he's running for president. From your perspective as a pollster, I don't see how this hurts any of the candidates. Does this put him in a position to gain support? Does it put him in a position where he's running for vice president? What say you?
Well, Tim Scott, he's a popular senator in South Carolina, and South Carolina will be third in the order of delegate selection among the Republicans, and it'll be first among Democrats, ironically. But because Biden had to change the rules so he doesn't get ambushed in a primary because he could lose. But but for Tim Scott, like nationally, he's running at 2%, and he's going to this vote that DeSantis has lost since January, because his vote has been cut in half since January. Now, a good bit of it has gone to President Trump, and President Trump may take more of what's there. But at the same time, DeSantis was hoping for a two-way race. It's not going to be a two-way race, because besides Tim Scott, you're going to have Chris Christie. You're going to have other candidates like Chris Sununu thinking of it. And even in South Carolina, Tim Scott is probably in fourth place behind Nikki Haley, although close. I mean, he may be around double digits, but Donald Trump's far ahead. So there's less of an undecided vote for DeSantis to get and to make it a two-way race. And, the thing that's amazing about Donald Trump is his people are passionate about him, and they are very likely to turn out, whether it's cold January in Iowa or New Hampshire. And when they make the turn to South Carolina, that's one of President Trump's stronger states, and where he did very well in 2016, helping him to get the momentum to seal the race. So, so right now, these candidates have to come up with a unique message, and they have to, try to get, in a position where they could make a case that they could beat Donald Trump. But right now, it's pretty hard to do because, President Trump has been a successful president that the rank and file Republicans across the country like the job he did. They voted for him overwhelmingly twice, and they want to vote for him overwhelmingly for a third time. So we'll see. Tim Scott, had a good announcement, got good media coverage. Ron DeSantis,
and he was congratulated by President Trump.
Yeah, because when Tim Scott, he was Donald Trump was president. Tim Scott was very supportive when he was there in the Senate, and they had some good initiatives together. So we'll see. And some people are doing this for other reasons, for future, like some people should wait, until 4 years from now. Some people want to. Maybe this is the way to get considered for vice president or get into the cabinet. But right now, Donald Trump is taking nothing for granted. I know President Trump is running hard to make sure that he wins the nomination again. But most importantly, goes on to beat Joe Biden and fix the terrible policies that Biden's put in place, reverse them, and turn the country back around.
Now, John McLaughlin, I failed to mention earlier Larry Elder and Asa Hutchinson. Where are they in the polling? Are they on? Did they make the grade to get any polling? Where are they at?
Right now, they haven't scored that much. Where if you look at, like on our website at McLaughlinOnline.com, Larry Elder had a 0 and Asa Hutchinson had 1%. Donald Trump, you can see if you go on that website and you see the April 28th national survey that we put up there, Donald Trump's gone up from January to 43% to 52%. Ron DeSantis has dropped from 31 to 16. And, the other votes are scattered. Mike Pence, 6%, Nikki Haley, 4%, Vivek Ramaswamy, 4%. So there's going to be other candidates that get in. Chris Christie might get in. Yeah. Governor Youngkin is now thinking about running again. After thinking about running, then thinking about not running. Now he's thinking about running again. Chris is thinking about running. So, it's their right. Let them run. And sure. But Donald Trump is running hard, and he's doing well right now. So
what about the other side? Obviously, I think there's only the one Democrat running against Biden, as far as I can remember, which is RFK Jr. How does that look, and how does that help Republicans?
Well, RFK Jr., and there is Marianne Williamson, but she's not registering. The ironic part about RFK Jr. is, there's polls where he's running about 60% to 20%. Dick Morris has a poll where Kennedy's up to like 27% and Biden's hovering at 58%. In that kind of a race, Biden, as the incumbent president, whatever he has is where he is. And if he continues to go down, where you could see, like when we ask in a crowded field of Democrats who people would vote for, Biden only gets 25%. Michelle Obama gets 15%. Kamala Harris gets 8%. Bernie Sanders gets 8%. A host of other candidates get votes, but they're not voting for their incumbent president, which is ironic because Donald Trump in a crowded field gets over half the vote. So it's a real paradox here. But Biden is a weak president, and the irony for us old guys like me, I've polled for a long time, but I remember when I was young and a student, Gene McCarthy in 1968 got over 40% of the vote in New Hampshire against incumbent President Lyndon Baines Johnson. And then he beat him in Wisconsin, which Johnson then got out and enabled Robert Kennedy Sr. to go into the race. And Kennedy was on his way to winning the nomination and running against Nixon, except when Sirhan assassinated him in California, which was a terrible tragedy. Ironically, now in history, you've got RFK Jr., who his first battle against, because right now the Democrats aren't planning to have a caucus in Iowa, although they're kind of messing around with it, but they wouldn't have any delegates with it. The Democrats have stripped the New Hampshire primary of their delegates, but they're going to have a primary anyway because the state legislature decides. So Biden could get ambushed in New Hampshire by RFK Jr. and proven to be vulnerable. And the Democrats in New Hampshire are upset because they don't have any delegates in the process because Biden was so afraid of losing New Hampshire that he won't let the Democrats award any delegates until they get to South Carolina, which saved his butt, 4 years ago. So
sounds rigged.
So, yeah. So well, that's par for the course. But it could be. I mean, Kennedy is ironically, Kennedy does very well with younger voters because some of his message appeals to Republicans in that it's anti-mandate and more of a civil libertarian kind of a message. On the other hand, he's a very big environmentalist, where he's against fracking in New York and was for the cleanup of the Hudson River, and he's a big climate change activist. So he could do very well in New Hampshire, and he could then, try to get as many votes in South Carolina. But who knows after that? Where
it could still be an upset.
Yeah. If he and by the way, if the economy goes into recession, if Biden mishandles, he keeps spending and increasing inflation, and he just his policies, the border, it's a mess. You've got the mayor and governor of New York begging him for money because
oh my goodness,
it's a
what a mess that's
city.
been.
Oh, it's just for those of us.
John McLaughlin, I got to pause right here real quick. We're going to come back and wrap up. We have a couple of more minutes to go. Stand by, everybody. We're on with John McLaughlin. McLaughlinonline.com is the website. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with John McLaughlin. And right before the break, John was telling us how immigration was impacting the 2024 race. John, finish your thought on immigration and then let us know how everybody could follow you.
Well, they can follow us on McLaughlinonline.com. They can follow us at Twitter or Truth, JMCLGHLN. And, and what's going on right now is as they're shipping these illegal immigrants around the country and giving them in New York, it works out to about $100,000 a year that they're going to need for each migrant. And they're putting them up in nice hotels in Manhattan, and they're getting free food, free health care, free whatever. And they're forcing out American citizens like veterans and homeless Americans to make room for these migrants. And you've got Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Hochul begging Biden for help that he's not giving them. And if anything, he's just shipping more illegal immigrants in, which is a disgrace. And Donald Trump today challenged Biden on this because it's one of the first things he'll do is stop this policy because it makes no sense. But in the meantime, Well, anyway, thank you, Rich. Great show.
John McLaughlin, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Chock full of information and data as always. Hope to have you back soon. Godspeed to you, my friend. And straight ahead, we're going to discuss what's going on with the federal budget. How do we get rid of waste? We're going to do that with Philip K. Howard. And Biden's released a statement on his negotiations with McCarthy. That's coming up next.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, and our telephone number, if you want to join the conversation, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a statement that was released a little while ago from the White House where President Biden's putting out his position on the negotiations, the conversations that he's having with Speaker McCarthy. And as of just a little while ago, a couple hours ago, they concluded their conversations on raising the ceiling, and they failed to get to an agreement, but both sides say it was productive. And here's the quote from Biden. It says, "I just concluded a productive meeting with Speaker McCarthy about the need to prevent default and avoid a catastrophe for our economy. We reiterated once again that default is off the table, and the only way to move forward is in good faith toward a bipartisan agreement." Now, I got to say, I'm grateful to hear that Biden's saying that default is off the table, because it was initially my concern that he would opt for a solution where, or an outcome, I should say, where default was the outcome, so that he could say, this is McCarthy's fault, this is the MAGA Republicans' fault, they did everything, and try to put himself in a better light. But I think in light of his tragic poll numbers, on especially with independents, I think it's a good idea for him to try and look like he's trying to get things done. And of course, the statement continued, "While there are areas of disagreement, the Speaker and I and his lead negotiators, Chairman Henry and Congressman Graves, and our staffs will continue to discuss the path forward." So that's the statement from Biden. But just over the weekend, Biden was saying that, look, if this thing goes down and things don't fly right, this isn't my fault. Listen to this.
And Mr. President, on the debt limit, you said already, I've done my part. Do you think that if there's a breach, nobody's going to blame you?
Of course, no one will blame me. I know you won't. You'll be saying Biden did a wonderful job. I know you.
Would you be blameless in a default situation?
On the merits, based on what I've offered, I would be blameless. On the politics of it, no one will be blameless. And by the way, that's one of the things that some are contemplating. I actually had, well, I got to be careful here. I think there are some MAGA Republicans in the House who know the damage that it would do to the economy. And because I am president and presidents are responsible for everything, Biden would take the blame. And that's the one way to make sure Biden's not reelected.
So that is President Biden saying, look, it's not his fault, that he's trying to already pin it on the Republicans as politics. I want to get the opinion of our next guest, Philip K. Howard. He's the chair of Common Good, regarding his thoughts on the need for a fiscal commission to look at the extent of waste and how we could address that. And I also want to get his reaction to the audio he just heard. Philip Howard, welcome.
Nice to be with you, Rich.
Likewise, sir. So what do you think of the president saying, look, it's not my fault, when the buck is supposed to stop with him?
Well, of course, this whole process is about trying to avoid the blame for any cuts. I mean, because democracy is really good when people are promising to give somebody something, and it's not very good when people have to take something back. So we have this government that's just swimming in red ink. And, it got worse for understandable reasons during COVID. But we have an unsustainable deficit now, and so we need to make some changes. But neither party wants to come up with a plan, because neither party wants to take the blame.
And I know that you posit in your recent op-ed in The Hill that leaders from both parties for decades have kicked the can of federal deficits down the road. And And I would agree with that. I think, we've tried to, sometimes there's rhetoric about it, but there's never really a real solution to get to that. So what's your recommendation? Tell us about this commission.
Yeah, so the choices are either raise taxes or cut programs, or three, cut waste. So it seems to me that because both parties are trying to avoid blame, the best way to handle this is to actually appoint an independent commission which will make recommendations to submit to Congress for an up or down vote. And then all of the changes can be done at once, and whoever's offended, the congressman can say, "Look, I didn't do it. It was their idea. It's not my fault." You hear the president saying that. So
kick the can.
Yeah. And so one of the advantages of that is that this commission could take on the embedded waste that everybody knows is in government. I mean, I go through 5 areas in my op-ed where we could save $400 billion a year. Everyone knows that the government is just stuffed with unnecessary red tape, with subsidies that are long obsolete, like farm subsidies from the New Deal and stuff. And we just need to clean house. Instead, we've got a government that's being run, as if it was a company in 1955 that's larded on more and more programs and has never overhauled itself. Well, no wonder we have so much waste.
Right. We never trim the fat. We just talk about trimming the fat.
Yeah.
It's a sad scenario. Now, with respect to putting together a commission like this, I think part of the issue that we run into is that, if you, let's just say, Biden starts putting people on a commission, Biden, McCarthy, how would you recommend even finding the people to get on the commission?
Yeah, really good question. Because the Simpson-Bowles Commission back in 2010, which no one embraced their findings, didn't come up with any recommendation. Only Simpson and Bowles had their own recommendation because the commission was made up of political appointees. It had someone from the public unions. It had someone from this wing of the Republican Party, that person from that wing of the Democratic Party. They couldn't, it's completely political, and the whole point is to avoid politics. So there's another way that these commissions are organized in the federal government. When they want to close unnecessary defense bases, they have something called base closing commissions, and they're typically, it varies a little bit, but they're typically 5 to 7 members, and they're people you've never heard of. They're just people who are respected. And the way it works is, I think, again, varies somewhat from time to time, but you get an appointee from the minority and the majority member of the House, from the minority and the majority member of the Senate, and maybe 2 from the president, or 1 from the president. You have 5 members there, and then they make a recommendation. Then it goes to Congress for an up or down vote, and so it's people who are respected to know something, but they're not people who are motivated by politics. They're people who are motivated by the fiscal reality that's facing our government.
Yeah, I hope such people like that exist, because oftentimes we look at.
I mean, there are all kinds of people like that. I mean, there are all sorts of retired political leaders. I could name you a bunch. I mean, former Governor Mitch Daniels, former Senator Bill Bradley. There are all kinds of people like that who no longer seeking political office, who are respected. Former cabinet members or heads of the Congressional Budget Office, people who've studied waste, like myself.
Sure. And the reality, Philip, is that if you have the minority in the White House making these recommendations, then you can't ever avoid politics entirely in a city like Washington, but you can do your best to get the most apolitical people you can in the room with that expertise on this and are focused on waste. and get to the bottom of something. Because obviously, if that were the case, then we'd never have any special counsels. We'd never have any appointments of anything, right? Because ultimately, there's always that that motivation somewhere. And let me just remind everybody, we're on with Philip K. Howard. He's the chair of Common Good, discussing his op-ed on a commission to review waste in the federal budget. And we're going to continue that discussion. We're also going to add in this caveat of President Biden last week saying, and even earlier today, actually, about the use of the 14th Amendment. And I think that's a pretty interesting take. We'll get your reaction to that as well. Folks, stick around. Don't go anywhere. The phone number is 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm looking at the 14th Amendment as to whether or not we have the authority. I think we have the authority. The question is, could it be done and invoked in time that it would not be appealed and as a consequence past the date in question and still default on the debt? That's a question that I think is unresolved.
All right, so that's Biden in Hiroshima, Japan yesterday. I said it was today. It was actually yesterday. And that was echoed, not echoed really. He says he thinks he has the authority and then talks about some uncertainty. Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, she totally went a different direction with this when she was on with Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, saying that, no, we can't appropriately use this to raise the debt ceiling. But she gave Biden credit for that as well. Listen to this.
Is the 14th Amendment fall into the category of extraordinary measures?
Well, extraordinary measures is used in a different way, but there has been much discussion of the 14th Amendment. And as President Biden said, I believe this morning, it doesn't seem like something that could be appropriately used in these circumstances, given the legal uncertainty around it and given the tight time frame we're on. So my devout hope is that Congress will raise the debt ceiling.
Now, our guest is from the Common Good. He is the chair there, Philip K. Howard. And Philip, I want to ask you, what's your take on this use of the 14th Amendment? Is it rhetoric? To me, it seemed all political. I don't think they were ever going to do it. It just seemed like a clever talking point at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty creative. In the 14th Amendment, in this obscure clause, provides that validity of the public debt of the United States shall not be questioned. Well, no one's questioning the validity of the public debt. The question, I mean, they're not there's no question of some disavowing what we owe. The question is whether we can pay it on time. And we have a debt ceiling, and we're spending too much money on lots of things, not just on interest payments on the debt. And so we need to fix that problem. And Congress and the president ought to come up with a responsible plan to do it, to fix it. And then when they come up with a responsible plan, they can lift the debt ceiling temporarily and subject to, pursuing this plan. And that's the way it ought to work. But that hasn't happened yet.
Now, putting on your pundit hat for just a moment, how do you see this playing out? I think McCarthy seems to me ready to raise the debt limit as long as he can get some of the concessions he's asking for, which are caps on certain spending and getting us to these pre-pandemic spending levels. Do you think Biden goes for that? Does he have a choice? Does McCarthy have the upper hand here? What say you?
Yeah, I think McCarthy has the upper hand, but I don't think frankly, I don't think he's ambitious enough. I think he'll get things that I've been working on, which are things like permitting reform, which will save some money on infrastructure, and he'll get some cuts in entitlements and work rules for entitlements and things that the liberals don't want to give up. But I don't think they're going to add up to much. It's just to make the Republicans, feel good or look good to their base. So what they really need to do is have a spring cleaning of government. Everybody knows it. The polls show the public is overwhelmingly for it. I mean, there's just so many items. I mean, red tape in healthcare is 30% of the budget. Well, that's $1 trillion a year right there in bureaucracy. That's $1 million per doctor. All these obsolete programs, 163, STEM education programs, farm subsidies from the New Deal, labor subsidies from before the New Deal. We're talking about huge sums of money here for things that should have been ended decades ago. And because they all have a constituency, right? There are all these people feeding at the public trough.
Right.
Neither party wants to take them away. So that's exactly why you need a fiscal commission that says, okay, it's time to get real. Let's take all of these away and let's put the dollars, where they need to go today, not where they needed to go in the 1930s.
It's a heck of a thing, a budget, right? When you actually balance it and do the right thing. If we actually
imagine that. I mean, imagine that. I mean, we just need a reboot.
Right. And it's interesting, your point, that irrespective of whichever party is in power, they're ultimately going to make the play for the base. So in this case, McCarthy, I think, wants a win as a speaker, a win for Republicans saying, hey, look, we averted the crisis, which is great because the Democrats were painting this doom and gloom. But at the end of the day, if you're really looking for a win for the American people, it would be to gut the crap out of this budget, right? Which is, I think, you said, right. He should be more aggressive.
And it's not to get rid of government. It's not a Tea Party thing. It's to just get rid of the waste in it. And I mean, every year the General Accountability Office comes up with study after study showing the programs that don't work and that waste money. But each one of those programs has a special interest that wants to keep it. That's what Washington is about. And so they never get fixed.
Now, Philip, I want to just jump in quickly. Let everybody know how they can find out what Common Good is all about and how they could find out more of the work that you're doing.
Yes, great. So we're a nonpartisan group. We work with leaders of both parties. It's at commongood.org, and I have a new book out called Not Accountable that explains how public employee unions have undermined democracy. We elect mayors who no longer have the authority to fix a failing school or fire a bad cop or do anything. So we're saying things that other people are scared to say and getting a lot of press from it and talking to presidential candidates. So we're really interested in ideas from your listeners.
All right. And the website, commongood.org is the website. Philip K. Howard, I want to thank you for being with us. I appreciate your insight, and I hope you'll come back again soon.
Yeah, great. Nice to be with you, Rich.
Likewise. Stick around. We're going to get into a conversation on why are kids in public schools still failing, even though COVID's been gone for a while.
They want to institutionalize lockdowns. They act like this worked when it did incredible damage throughout our country. I mean, look at like Florida, our unemployment rate's 2.6%. New York is 4.1. Why is the gap? It's part of it's the taxation and yes, but part of it was the lockdowns. You know, it destroyed parts of the economy. And so the idea, and it didn't stop the spread. So the idea that we would even be entertaining that going forward is absolutely crazy. And so I think that we need to make sure that we say Fauciism was wrong. Fauciism was destructive, and we will never let Fauciism take root in this country ever again.
So that's former Governor Ron DeSantis discussing lockdowns and the implications of those lockdowns, which are negative in most scenarios, including schools. We're now looking at the aftermath of that, where EdWeek has a recent survey that came out that shows that misbehavior is still up more now than in 2019, up 66% in December of 21. 1/3 in the new poll said students are misbehaving way more. And experts say the culture shock and whiplash from the extended period of remote classes is only one of the psychological and academic factors behind the problem. More than 200,000 students have lost a parent to COVID-19, and several states reported an increase in youth suicide during the pandemic. So not a great place. We're still dealing with the aftermath of this, and it's a terrible thing. I'd like to know how we get past this now that we're back in class, in person. Our guest, Dr. Rebecca Good, she's a lifelong educator, recently retired after more than 3 decades in education, working as a teacher, campus principal, central office executive director, and a superintendent. Dr. Rebecca Good, welcome to the program.
Hi, Rick. Good evening.
I am well. So let's get into this this topic as I think affects so many Americans, so many people, a lot of people whose children are really hurting. And how do we get out of it?
Well, there's no easy answer, because really what happened was some of these problems were trending up before COVID. We were having teacher burnout problems. We were already seeing an escalation in classroom management problems. Some states had gone to not allowing schools to suspend anymore. Their politicians had taken that out, and so we were already starting to see an uptick in classroom management issues and teacher burnout, and teacher retention, and recruitment, all of that. COVID put that all on steroids and caused things to go bad faster. So first we need to understand that COVID didn't cause it, it accelerated it. So being able to be honest with ourselves to say, okay, we admit that COVID didn't cause this, so what do we do about it? That's a big step. Part of it is needing to get our politicians to pay more attention to schools. Frankly, now that we have these issues in our schools, unfortunately, it's left to people who are not in the school systems to fund the solutions. Of course, we need more counselors. We need more therapists. We need a lot more people in place to help us deal with the aftermath of, for example, having kindergartners from 2 years ago come in as second graders who have not in any way been socialized to be able to sit in a classroom and learn. We have middle schoolers who start learning how to socialize in a more mature way through their hormones and so forth, who missed out on being able to do that. And we're still trying to cope with those middle schoolers and their misbehavior. There's a lot that we have to do on top of trying to keep our teachers in the classroom. So there's a lot going on, and there's no easy solution, but there needs to be a solution-based approach, that includes funding, very much so, along with the full support of the community stakeholders and families and mental health advocates and business and government agencies. So that's a big undertaking.
Now, with respect to, let me just follow up on something you said. With respect to the misbehavior, is this, you said that this was already there and it was exacerbated by the lockdown, by the pandemic. How do we go about addressing the misbehavior problem specifically?
We need to put things in place that will sort of help start calming kids while being consistent with it. Part of what I see, because I still am very much involved, I'm a truancy prevention magistrate, and I help families and schools keep kids from being absent. I'm a Title IX independent investigator, so I'm very much involved with schools. And what I see are effective schools that have an effective principal that has been able to get those teachers to have engaging instruction and an effective school-wide classroom management system that they actually use and are consistent with. The ineffective schools don't have that in place. So if you have listeners who are thinking, things are going a little crazy at my school, I need to start asking questions and see if my school is functioning as high at the high level that it needs to be to make it a safe learning environment for my child.
What types of questions should parents be asking?
Well, first of all, they need to be involved. They need to go to anything that is going on at the school, any function, PTO meetings, assemblies, even the choir that they do, because you get a sense of the school when you're there. It's really not fair to take pot shots at your child's school if you're not going there on a regular basis and getting to know the principal without having your child be in trouble, getting to know the teachers, right? And so being a visible parent at a school is important. Now, some parents are going to say the school is not letting me in since COVID. A lot of that's loosening, but there's still PTO meetings. There's still ways of being able to be visible at school, even if it's volunteering to work the car line, right, in the mornings. Just little things that makes you that valuable parent that schools need, because they never have enough support personnel to man the car line or the lunches and so forth.
What would you recommend these parents ask when they go to these meetings?
So once they get a feel for the school, then they'll know the questions to ask. They can ask, why aren't you suspending? Why are kids running the hallways when I'm here? Why? And those are good questions to ask. And then to have concerns. It's okay to sit down with your teachers and have concerns as long as you stay professionally respectful. Some of our parents, since COVID, you've seen articles where we have parents spitting at teachers, getting in their faces and yelling at them. That's not professional behavior to do with your teachers, right? It's not professional to do that with anyone. And yet we have parents who have felt very free in sort of coming after our teachers, and that's just not something that we can continue to allow. So, again...
Well, I think it's also an interesting time where we have teachers... I'm just looking at an article from a couple of days ago. Teacher fired for filming raunchy TikTok dances in classroom. And I think there's been numerous instances of teachers engaging in all sorts of things. So I think since the advent of the pandemic, between these stories that are not so few and far between, and parents having the chance to be in the classroom because the classroom now became their home, we've seen a lot more parents wanting to get involved. So that was why I was asking what they should be asking. But folks, our guest is Dr. Rebecca Good. She's with us for another segment. And if you have a question for Dr. Good, feel free to give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We are on with Dr. Rebecca Good, and she's going to give us her final thoughts on hopefully giving a solution and a remedy to fixing this issue of students misbehaving more now than they did prior to COVID as a result of the pandemic lockdowns. Dr. Good?
Thank you, Rich. If a teacher reaches out to you as a parent and says your child is misbehaving, it used to be that the parent believed the teacher, and that sort of has eroded a little bit. I would encourage parents to be open to what the teacher has to say and to listen, and maybe let it be out there that maybe your child was affected by COVID and all of that happened with it, and maybe your child does need some outside counseling or maybe some counseling by the counselor at school. But let yourself be open to the fact that the school is sending you a message about your child that might be tough to hear, but you want to work with the school to better it, right? Let's keep it centered on the child and how we can help the kids get through this last 2 years of not being in the classroom, and let's help the school. Let's work together as a team so that this child not only learns better but behaves better. That's my big message for parents.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to follow up with the work that you're doing, is there a website or social media account that you could recommend they follow you on?
I'm on the Ask Dr. Be Good Facebook page, and they're very easy to find. Ask Dr. DRBGOOD, and I'm happy to take questions. And I post current educational issues and thoughts on that. So I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to maybe ask questions about what they should do in certain school situations. I'm happy to answer back.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate that. Dr. Rebecca Good is our guest, and I want to thank you for being with us tonight. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Rich.
You bet. All right, now I wanted to continue with the story that I teased a little while ago, because it's right on topic with what we're talking about. And it's true. I think some of the things that Dr. Rebecca Good said are very true. As you guys know, I spent, a little more than 9 years, just under a decade as a school board member. And I can tell you that, most parents feel like if they get a report from a teacher with respect to saying, hey, look, your kid did X, Y, and Z, there are some parents that'll say, not my kid, not my Susie, not my Jose, my kids would never do that. And it's because, they're embarrassed by that, or they feel like they did a better job as parents. And then you have other parents that would respond with something like, look, my kid misbehaves at home all the time, and you don't see me calling you at school, right? So I think you get both sides of that spectrum. Ultimately, I think that most parents, I've had 2 kids in school. I was always pretty receptive. If a teacher told me, hey, your kid did this, I was like, how dare she? I didn't stop to say, did you really do that? I never even stopped to find out, because I know my kids. I know my kids. If a teacher told me, your kid was extremely chatty in class and was constantly distracting other students and being very, very disruptive, I wouldn't be shocked by that. I'm very chatty and disruptive, so I get it. I totally get it. And that's when I usually have to, say I'm sorry. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. That's my kid. She's a lot like me. And it is what it is. I mean, I've seen this happen my entire life. And just to give you a quick anecdotal quickly, because it's kind of cute, kind of funny. When my oldest daughter was in preschool, I was running in a campaign for the state assembly in New Jersey. And I remember dropping her off, and it was a church school, and the pastor's wife, their daughter, the pastor and his wife, their daughter, was married to the fire captain, who was politically involved in the town, and they were very nice people. But I remember somebody mentioned something about my opponent, and my daughter, who was 3 at the time, 3 years old, she heard the name of my opponent, and she got on top of a chair and told every little kid in her classroom in pre-K that person, the opponent's name, is garbage, and that you have to put him in the waste paper basket. and you have to vote for my daddy, Rich Valdez. and I was, they told me the story. I was beaming with pride for my little girl. And I said, did she really get on the chair? And they said she had her fist in the air. I said, oh my God, I love her so much. She's such a cutie. And I thought, that was just her natural ability. And I never said anything that this guy was, belonged in the trash bucket. but that was where she went with it at 3 years old, maybe 3.5. And it was way before, being 4 years old and going to kindergarten. And the point of my story is I know who my kids are and I know what they do. And I think most parents know what their kids do. And oftentimes it's when parents feel like they're being slighted that they take exception to what teachers are saying. So when we come back, your calls and more. Plus, we're going to talk about the teacher that was fired for filming a raunchy TikTok dance video in the classroom. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And a teacher was fired for filming a raunchy TikTok dance video in the classroom. Apparently, things got a little too hot for this teacher. A dance-loving educator has reportedly been fired from her position for performing sexy dance moves with her students and posting the videos on TikTok. Her name is Cibele Ferreira, who is Brazilian, has taught English all around the world, with her most recent class being taught at an unnamed language school. And in a bid to engage her students, she began dancing with her pupils in the classroom. One of my students invited me to dance with him, and the class really enjoyed the interaction. After that, the other students began to ask questions too, and I took advantage of the interaction and the interest of the students to apply my classes with more quality because the students are more interested and excited, she said. Now, I know how difficult this is for younger students to focus their attention on teaching versus social networks and technology, she said, so I can take advantage of their interest and bring them closer to teaching. Ferreira began posting videos of her classroom interactions along with videos of her class on social media, where she's gathered 9.7 million followers on TikTok and 1.2 million followers on Instagram. Let's see. Wow, it doesn't look racy to me. Oh, now I see. They're grabbing their breasts in front of the classroom, in front of the chalkboard. And the teacher is really young, so she kind of blends in with the students. And she was judged for wearing crop tops and low-cut dresses in the classroom. I mean, is that really her fault? I mean, doesn't her boss see her every day? I mean, I don't know sometimes. I think they scapegoat too many people here. There's a video here. And the class seems to love getting up and doing TikTok videos. So we're going to continue our discussion on education. I want to get to that, plus some of your calls. 833-4VALDEZ. 833-4VALDEZ is the phone number. This doesn't look racy at all to me. A little booty shaking, but I wouldn't say it's racy or raunchy in any way. Looks like they just caught a still image. Anyway, don't go anywhere. Open Phone America's coming up next. And wait till you hear about this yearbook that's coming out of a school. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ is the number. And the Open Phone America is your opportunity to chime in and let your voice be heard and bring any topic to the table, anything that happened today or any topic, honestly, as well as comment on the topics we've discussed tonight. And we've discussed a number of topics tonight. We talked about how behavior issues are getting worse in classrooms despite the kids being back in school. At first, everybody was saying the issue was COVID, and it was because COVID, and that it may likely be true. But now we have more behavior problems than we had in the past. And I think a big part of that, and I can tell you this is based on personal experience. I spoke with a teacher recently who said, kids do whatever they want, and they know they're not going to get in trouble because the guidance counselors and many principals are defending the kids, saying, oh, but they went through such a tough time. We can't suspend these kids. So they're not suspending anybody. There's no accountability. They're not even calling parents in. They're just having these, referring them to the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor kind of just strokes them a little bit. All right, here you go. All right, don't do that again. I know it's so tough. You're not allowed to use your phone in the classroom, and you've had to stay home for a year. And I'm not trying to minimize anybody's plight here, but I am trying to say that we've taken a very, very passive approach in many school districts. And, of course, that's why. It's just like crime on the street. When things get out of control on the streets, it's because you've got police that are taking a more passive approach. At least that's my opinion. If you disagree with me or agree with me or whatever, you can feel free to let me know. 833-4-VALDEZ. I also want to talk about what do we do with all the migrants that are coming into the country with the influx of people and mayors like Eric Adams in New York saying they don't know what to do. Where do we send them? We're going to get into that as well. And there's a story now in The Hill, thehill.com, indicating that more and more Americans don't believe in God, or less and less Americans do believe in God. So we're going to get into that and how are we getting to this place? And is there any correlation between any of these things, right? The fact that we've got more crime in the streets, we've got worse kids in the classroom, and more adults that say they don't believe in God. Is there a correlation? Is there not? This is always a touchy one for many people. Not for me. I don't care. I like to talk about this stuff. But some people get very, very bothered because they feel that there are very, very many atheists that are very highly moral individuals and that they don't need God for morality. And that's fine. That's their take. But it seems as there's more and more of those people. We have more and more of these issues. And of course, they try to point to things saying, oh, the most religious people are the most dangerous people. So it's always a fun argument to have, in my opinion. 833-4-VALDEZ. But I left off in the last hour discussing a school, right? A school teacher that was producing these racy TikTok videos. And again, from what I saw, didn't seem very racy to me. Then I see, you keep scrolling down in the article, and again, not racy. I see her on looks like she's in somewhere very tropical, palm trees all over the place, very nice balcony. She's on the balcony wearing a bikini, and it's a thong back bikini, which seems to be on trend right now. Every time I'm in Florida, that's literally all you see over the beach. The one piece is, I guess, a notion of the 70s. But what caught my eye here was not the T-back, but it says the English teacher also has accounts on OnlyFans and Pornhub.com. Now I'm thinking, look, OnlyFans, you could potentially say you're doing non-sexual things on there that require a viewer subscription. But Pornhub, I think the name gives it away, and I think it's a hub for pornography. So it says she makes extra money there, and I think that really becomes the question. What are you allowed to do for extra money? And I think this is just all about teacher contracts, right? Many teacher contracts, I've never seen one in my life, but I would presume that they're not that different, or they have the potential to be not that different than other types of employment agreements or contractor agreements. I can tell you, for example, for me, there are stipulations in my contract that tell me what type of additional work I can take on and what I can't take on. And, it's fair. And you agree to that on the front end and you say, all right, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So I get it. But it seems like that's not happening here. There was also a closing comment here where it alludes to a school teacher in Indiana who was fired after her OnlyFans account was uncovered by her employer, while a high school teacher in Arizona left her classroom and quickly became a millionaire sharing explicit content on her OnlyFans account. I think you need to make a choice, right? If you're going to educate children, kindergarten through 12th grade, and I would even say into college, right? I think you got to be clear on what you want to do. If you want to have a side hustle where you do sexual activity or nudity or whatever it is, it's probably not the best place for you to be as a second grade teacher, right? I'm just thinking, or a high school teacher for that matter. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. 833-4-VALDEZ. Now, before we get to your calls, I want to also talk about this disturbing yearbook, right? Now, it's a high school yearbook that parents are balking about, where they're saying this is no good, right? This is a problem because they're talking about all sorts of inappropriate things with the actual students. Now, this is coming out of a high school in Missouri where there's some controversy over this because they're saying they're kind of highlighting student participation in sex, drugs, and alcohol. So we're going to get into that one as well. This was on the Today Show, and I think it's an interesting conversation because I would take exception to that too. So don't go anywhere. Your calls and more, plus this disturbing yearbook content with one parent saying, what kind of sicko put this together? We're going to hear from those parents as well right after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, so a teacher of the year in California was arrested for having sex with a student. This is being reported today, or I should say on the 22nd of May. On breaking911.com. Authorities in California say a former recipient of the Teacher of the Year award is accused of engaging in sexual activity with a 16-year-old boy. This is a female teacher, by the way. Officials have indicated that there could be potentially other victims as well and asking them to come forward. Wow, so this is not she fell in love with the one kid. She was hooking up with 16-year-olds. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office released a statement saying that Tracy Vanderhurst, a 38-year-old math teacher at Yucaipa High School, and I know a lot of guys are saying, how come I didn't have a 38-year-old math teacher? I don't know. There was like one teacher in their 30s when I was in high school. The rest of them were all like older than 65. But math teacher at Yucaipa High School was arrested on Thursday night for engaging in unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor. She's currently being held on $30,000 bail, but it remains unclear whether the minor was involved, was a high school student or not. I don't think that matters, right? The law isn't, hey, if you can't have sex with your students, right? That's a school rule. The law is you can't have sex with minors, period. Tracy Vanderhulst is Yucaipa High School's Teacher of the Year, as she epitomizes the educator so many desire to be. And that was the Yucaipa Cali Mesa Joint Unified School District statement, according to News Mirror, saying she's the kind of innovative teacher from whom we hope our children will grow. The educator who strives to engage all of her students from her intervention classes to her honors classes. So that was her in 2017, Teacher of the Year. Now she's 38 years old, and she's being convicted of being charged with statutory rape, sexual intercourse with a minor. And sadly, there's a different story like this every week. Now, some might say, look, no, just because there's a story about it isn't true. All right, then there's a conspiracy to go after teachers all over the place, and particularly these female teachers that are having sex with young men or teenage boys, I should say. I don't know. It sounds fishy to me. It really does. Like we've got to get inside. Are women now the new predator going after people's sons? I mean, I've never seen such a thing, but I read about it in the paper every single. It seems like every single day, or at least every other day. I don't know. What say you? Give me a call, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. I always forget that number. I'll get it eventually. Let's go to Ottumwa, Iowa, KBIZ, and check in with Nancy. Hey, Nancy, you're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
I had a comment. I raised my kids on my own. My kids were pretty well disciplined in school. I mean, they did good. But what shocked me is there was a lot of
Nancy, could you turn down your radio? Because I'm hearing it back, and it's difficult to hear you.
A lot of the teachers were physically abusive to my children.
Really?
School, and that's
like hitting them with rulers or sexually abusive?
Just physically abusive, like smacking them, grabbing them by their arm, by just physically abusive.
That happened to me as a kid. Honestly, when I was a kid, I remember going to public school 197, PS 197 on Kings Highway, Brooklyn, New York, and I remember one of the teachers. I'll tell you, today, as a 45-year-old man, I can tell you, I really respect what they did. I think they instilled a lot of respect and some healthy fear. There was a guy named Mr. Benowitz, another guy named Mr. Shaw. And Mr. Shaw and Mr. Benowitz, these guys were tough. They always had a bullhorn. They were very straightforward dudes. Nice guys, but when it came down to it, and when I didn't listen, they would grab me like by the bicep really tight, really tough, and kind of jolt you around, be like, hey, listen, get in line, kid. And, that was normal. And I have to say, I never thought of telling my dad, hey, the teacher grabbed me by the arm. If I told my dad the teacher grabbed me by the arm, he'd go, why are you embarrassing our family? And he'd grab me by the other arm, right? So, that was something where I was like, yeah, okay, no, understood. Things were tough in my school, but I'm not, trying to minimize what happened to your children. But I know that when I was a kid, that was pretty normal, Nancy.
Yeah, but I didn't feel it was normal because there was too much of it. And it's like I stood up against these teachers, which got me in a tight spot because a lot of them called the cops on me.
Oh, boy.
And I told the cops, I'm not doing nothing wrong. I'm standing up for abuse with teachers abusing my kids.
Well, listen, as a parent, you have to always stand in the gap and stick up for your kids, because if you're not, who's going to? But that'll happen sometimes. I mean, there's always that fine line between advocating for your child and going over that line. And sometimes you may not even go over the line. It could just be the teacher feels like, you know what? We know if we call the cops, they're going to take our side versus yours. So we're going to do that. And hopefully that wasn't the case, but I get it. And I know how that works. We just saw that. If you missed it, I talked about it last Friday, where the police were called over a disturbance about a guy who'd made a prepaid reservation to a Hertz rent-a-car place. And the woman, in her ignorance, didn't know that Puerto Rico was part of the United States and that a Puerto Rican driver's license is the same as a New Jersey driver's license, and gave the guy a hard time, in so much so that she called the police, and the police came, and then they gave him a hard time on top of that. And it was just like ignorance upon ignorance. And I actually did most of my podcast last week, This is America, with Rich Valdez. If you get a chance, check it out. This is America with Rich Valdez. I did most of my podcast on that topic. And lamentably, sometimes when the cops are called, things get so much worse rather than getting better. But thank you, Nancy. I appreciate your call. Big shout out to everybody in Iowa and KBIZ. And before we bring in the next topic, I just wanted to reiterate the story that I was talking about the teacher of the year, and her incident, right, with this minor. And again, you've got to take exception, or at least take pause for a moment and say, was this always happening and we didn't know? Is it the advent of the internet that all of a sudden now, because we have all this interconnectivity, that we are able to get this out? Like, how was this going on for so long? And was it once celebrated? Like if you were 16 and you're like, hey, you know, Mrs. So-and-so, she's 38, and you're like high-fiving your boys in the locker room? Or, I mean, I didn't hear of it when I was a kid. It was always a fantasy. It was never a reality for any of my friends. And I just can't imagine. I mean, some of the teachers were having a free-for-all with each other, but the handful of young ones. But I can't say that students were doing that. So I don't know. It remains an enigma to me. This one, it escapes me. I can't ever seen that happen. I also want to talk about this yearbook, but I'm looking at the clock and it says I have seconds to go before the break. So before I bring in the story of the yearbook, which I think is a pretty good story, where parents are taking exception to the school having a section in the yearbook where students get to detail their participation in sex and drugs and alcohol, you know, like where they scored in school and, you know, what it was like to be messed up on these things. So we're going to get the reaction of some parents on the way back, as well as your reactions to that, and learn a little bit more about that story. Plus, less and less Americans believe in God, according to the latest survey. And Eric Adams is not sure what to do with the immigrants flooding New York City, but he has an idea. And the idea is that we should probably spread the wealth and let everybody do their fair share. So we're going to get to that, as well as your calls. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. And online, if you want to chime in on social media, it's at Rich Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez with an S on all of the social media. We're coming right back.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And a bit of breaking news. A U-Haul truck crashed into the barriers near the White House. A suspect is in custody. The truck crashed into a barrier on the north side of Lafayette Square. And the Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi says this happened just around 10 p.m. a little while ago. And shortly before 10 p.m., the Secret Service Uniform Division officers detained the driver of a box truck. The vehicle collided with security barriers on the north side of Lafayette Square at 16th Street. According to their statement, there were no injuries to any Secret Service or White House personnel, and that's all they're reporting at this time. Metro Police, D.C. Metro Police are at the scene. The cause and manner of the crash are currently under investigation, and most of the roads and pedestrian walkways near the crash site were closed as officials conduct their suspicious package investigation as well. And they're working with fire and EMS as well as the D.C. police. So that's the story at the White House. Somebody rammed a U-Haul truck through the barricades at the White House. We'll keep you posted on that as more becomes available. Nothing has happened to Joe El Baboso Biden, and in so much as we know, El Trompito was not involved. He was not the driver. As far as I know, Christopher Wray wearing a red MAGA hat was also not the driver, but we're going to wait and see exactly what happens. Maybe there'll be some video footage that we could get in a little bit. Now, I wanted to also share with you a couple of other breaking news topics from the day today. The South Carolina shooter, the school shooter, apologized for the first time in court today, begging for a shorter sentence. And in another really tough story here, a woman drowned her children. First, her 6-year-old daughter, and then she tried drowning her 8-year-old daughter moments later, but was stopped. Now, this woman, Jamie Bradley Brunn, she's 37 years old. She's been charged with murder and attempted murder following the attack that occurred on Friday. And she was stopped by her oldest daughter. And it's just horrible. At around 1:30 in the morning, her 16-year-old daughter was woken up by her 8-year-old daughter screaming. And, the sheriff's report doesn't include all the specifics about how the mother attempted to drown her child, but confirmed the cries for help were coming from the bathroom. The courageous 16-year-old rushed into the bathroom, rescued her sister from their mother, and sought help from a nearby family member who called 911. Sheriff Tanner expressed great admiration for the brave actions of the 16-year-old daughter, stating that I'm very proud of her. I think she did an unbelievable job. She defended her family when no one else was available. Adding that her courage is amazing. And it's a really unfortunate story because the 6-year-old daughter did die. Despite CPR, they could not revive her. And I'll never understand this. And I'm glad I don't want to really understand it. Maybe I do. I don't know. I don't think it fits in my head why someone would hurt their own child, in particular, why moms choose to drown their children. We talk about school shooting. I feel like I've heard it once. I've heard it one too many times about a mother drowning her own child. It's just absolute insanity to me. The 8-year-old did not sustain any severe injuries, physical injuries, and both her and her 16-year-old sister are in the care of another family member, as confirmed by the sheriff's department. So that's a crazy story. And the other crazy story I wanted to get to, and we're going to get to your calls momentarily, is this story about the yearbook. And this yearbook is being called into question by some parents because let's let them tell the story, right? Listen to this.
So it's kind of like sports, and then bam, drugs and alcohol. There's pictures of condoms and Plan B.
A pregnancy test is asking for the weirdest place that you've hooked up, meaning have sex.
Yeah, altered state dressing room in the West County Mall, the football field between 2 field hockey goals.
All right, so those are parents discussing what's in the Missouri high school yearbook, detailing the sex, drugs, and alcohol participation of the students, and the school allowing this to be in the book. The one mom says you start flipping through, it's really nice. You see the swim team and the basketball team and all their accomplishments. Then you turn the page. According to Nikki Walker, she's the parent of an 8th grader who often interacts with Kirkwood high school students, and this was on the Today Show. And she was horrified to see photos of vape pods and beer amongst survey answers describing students' poison of choice. The Post, New York Post, has reached out to Kirkwood High School for comment, and apparently there wasn't a comment. So I just wonder, what is going on in public education nowadays? Let's go to Kenny. He's also in Ottumwa, Iowa, on KBIZ. Kenny, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I kind of wanted to back Nancy up. I went to Ottumwa schools here, and I may have spoke with it about this one time on your program or maybe another one. But, yeah, I got it when I was in school. I called this teacher by his first name, and he rounded on me, slapped me across the face, said, "Don't you ever call me by my first name." And I had another teacher threaten me. I spoke up in math class. He says, he threatened to put my nose on the other side of my face. And that I had a teacher make me put gum in my nose and keep it there all the way to the end of class. That's because I was chewing gum in class. I shouldn't have been doing it, but come on. No.
Now, Kenny, what year did all this stuff happen? What year was it?
Did to me, I got slapped. You wouldn't dare do that to a child now. And
No, I agree.
For the witnesses, he didn't care.
No, what year was it?
I have a theory on why that might have happened, though.
I have a theory on what year was it.
Okay, the Patty Hearst Symbionese.
All right, thank you, Kenny. I appreciate it. I guess Kenny couldn't hear me. Let us continue with Bill in Rock Springs, Wyoming, KUGR out of Salt Lake City. Go right ahead, Bill.
Evening, Rich. I guess there's probably not too many people in your audience who are old enough to remember Ronald Reagan. And
you'd be surprised. It's a pretty old audience because the show's been around for so long. A lot of listeners that started listening in 1978. And that means they've been listening to this show for 45 years. I'm only 45 years old. So I think you'd be surprised on who remembers Reagan. But go right ahead.
Anyway, Ronald Reagan made a campaign promise when he was running for the presidency that he would abolish the Federal Department of Education. Well, it was made clear to him by the Bolsheviks after he got in that that was not going to be happening, and he basically let them install whoever they wanted to be in charge of the Department of Education because he slipped in as the second in command in the Department of Education, a woman by the name of Charlotte Iserby. And Charlotte Iserby was a sharp cookie. As the second in command in the Department of Education.
Was she second in command to Bill Bennett?
I'm sorry?
Well, you said he let anybody into the Department of Education. I remember Secretary Bill Bennett being an excellent secretary in the Reagan years. Did this woman Iserby serve under Bennett? No. In that case, that's the case we're talking about. You brought it up. Did she serve under Bennett or no?
I don't know. It doesn't really matter who she served under.
Why not?
Because Charlotte Iserby documented everything that came across her desk and made photocopies of everything and took them home and then started writing articles about the deliberate dumbing down of America, which was the name of her book that she later published, that was being documented by all of these things that were coming across her desk. And then she started writing articles in magazines about the deliberate dumbing down programs that she was documenting. And whoever it was that was her boss basically called her in one day and said, "Charlotte, you have to stop publishing these articles. They're just, this is not information that we want out to the public. And basically, if you don't stop publishing these articles, you're going to have to leave." And she basically quit her job, went home and put together a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, which you can see on her website now that she's deceased at deliberatedumbingdown.com.
Yeah, well, we're not going to give any free plugs to anything. But thank you. It's like a song they have, The Freaks Come Out at Night. Well, yeah, I'll take a look at Charlotte Iserby. I don't know her. I've never really heard of her. But I can agree that there's a deliberate dumbing down for sure. And I would say this is part of the unrestricted warfare that we've seen, like you said, from the Bolsheviks, from whether it be the communists in Russia, the communists in China. I think so many of our enemies that are predisposed to communism. They want to see America fall, and they don't want to fire a single shot. And that's a topic that we talk about here a lot because there's some people out there that don't believe, right? There's some that don't believe. They believe that whatever fate we meet in America, we're going to meet it by way of someone trying to take over, an invasion of some sort. And that's clearly not the case. I mean, the biggest invasion we could see right now is the one that Joe Biden is, the chief inviter, right? He's inviting everybody into the country, creating apps and sending soldiers to open up gates and let people right into the country. So clearly, there's no need to invade us with force when you have a guy like Biden that will let people in. And the fact that we import so many of our critical positions like nurses and doctors and engineers has been the case for so long. And most people know this. You've been to a hospital, you'll see that there's a good amount of staff that are clearly from abroad, whether it's from India, the Philippines, Haiti. I mean, there's just so many countries that are producing nurses and doctors and engineers at a rate way quicker than the United States. And that's why we have these shortages. And it's clear as day. And no one is working to address that. And I agree with Reagan. I think one of the best things that would happen in this country is to abolish the federal education department. It's become nothing more than a bank lately. And now it's a bank that's lending out money that it won't even collect, right? They're trying to give it away for free. Seems to me like a central government power grab to take over public education at the higher education level and use it for their benefit, for the benefit of advancing their message and cause. And I don't think anybody could argue against that. We're definitely seeing that happen. But thank you. I appreciate your call. We'll look into Charlotte Iserbyt, and we're going to get to your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, America. So again, just going back to Charlotte Iserbyt, because she is unknown to me, but she's the author of this book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, that we just heard about. And according to the online Wikipedia, that's never wrong and never biased. It says that she was arguing that the book talked about gradual changes in the American public education system to eliminate the influences of a child's parents and mold the child into a member of the proletariat in preparation for a socialist collectivist world of the future. And again, that was back when she wrote it a million years ago. This is a woman born in 1930. This sounds very accurate in this day and age. So I'll keep looking at this, and maybe we'll talk more about her on one of our podcasts that we do. But there is a fascinating story. Does God exist? Is the question in The Hill, and the answer here, or the rest of it here. Only half of Americans say yes. Only half of Americans now say they're sure that God exists. That finding from the closely watched General Social Survey stands out amongst several nuggets of new data about religion in America. Not quite 50% of Americans say they have no doubt about the existence of God, according to the 2022 survey released on Wednesday by the NORC, the University of Chicago Research Association. As recently as 2008, the share of sure believers was over 60%. 34% of Americans never go to church. The NORC found the highest figure recorded in 5 decades. And another new report from the Public Religion Research Institute said that 27% of Americans claimed no religion in 2022, and that's up 19% from 2012, and it's up 16% from 2006. Now, the Public Religion Research Institute, their report tracks a historic decline in the nation's Christian population, especially amongst white people. The share of Americans who identify as white evangelical Protestant has dwindled from 23% to 14% since 2006. The share of mainline white Protestants has fallen from 18% to 14%. White Catholics have declined from 16% to 13%. And that's the ultimate report here. I'm going to get to your calls on this straight ahead. I don't want you to go anywhere. We're going to wrap it up in a moment, but I'm going to get to your calls. We got calls from Ohio, West Virginia, North Carolina, and Montana. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. What is going on in America?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Rich. Rich, I'm a God-fearing man. I do believe that God exists, but I also believe that Lucifer exists, and I think that's a part of the moral decay of our country, is that Lucifer exists, and he is just almost as powerful as God, but not quite as powerful as God. And like I say, I'm a God-fearing man, and I hope that more people get back to it in this country because I think that's what we need.
Paul, you're right. The devil is on the loose, and it takes somebody who knows what's going on to make sure that they know there's both good and evil out there and to be cognizant of it. Thank you, brother. I always appreciate hearing from you in Ohio and WHIZ. Let's go to Dave in Morehead City, North Carolina, with about a minute to go. Dave, go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. Absolutely. We're a nation that's turned away from God, and that started a long time ago. The coming down of America is part of an ongoing process.
Dave, your phone is chopping up in and out. I'm sorry. Let's see if we can get his line fixed. Let's go to Tommy in Charleston, West Virginia, WCHS. Tommy, about 45 seconds. Go right ahead.
Mr. Valdez, thank you for the opportunity. I went to the Devil's Island of high schools. They'll knock you out. You're late, put out your hand, you get hit with a switch. Jug. After school, 15 minutes at attention, 15 minutes at ease. You slouch.
What year was that?
And repeat it. I graduated in 74, and yeah, they drove themselves out of business. But what they taught us, the most valuable lesson they taught us, you are accountable for your actions. And that is not being taught enough today.
That's right. They taught you. You fool around, you're going to find out. And you would find out for real. My brothers went to Catholic school. And one of my brothers was so bad that they banned the rest of the family. And I never got to go to Catholic school. But it was fascinating that, they were constantly telling us how the nuns would beat them, with rulers and yardsticks, just beatings. And, again, back in that era, you couldn't come home and tell my mother or my father that you got beat. You'd get beat again. That's just how it was. That's the era I'm from. Anyway, thank you, America, for being with me tonight. We're going to do it again. Take care. Good night, and God bless. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, keep it locked right on this station. We're going to be back tomorrow.